film. And his latest film is called Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. After his daughter's life is threatened, a wisecracking Detective Axel Foley teams up with a new partner and some old pals to turn up the heat on a conspiracy. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is an action comedy directed by Mark Malloy in his film debut, written by Will Beall, Tom Gormican, and Kevin Eden from a story by Beall. This is the fourth installment in the Beverly Hills Cop film franchise and the sequel from 30 years ago to Beverly Hills Cop 19, the one Beverly Hills Cop 3 in 1994. Eddie Murphy also reprises his role as Foley with Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, Paul Reiser, Bronson Pinchot, reprising their roles in previous films, and adding Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Taylor Page, and Kevin Bacon in this new film. In this story, as you heard me say, of course, Axel, I mean, if you ever think about every Beverly Hills Cop film, he always starts in Detroit. He's always in Detroit, never promoted. He's been doing the same job as a detective for 40 years. Everybody around Axel gets promoted. Now, Paul Reiser is now took over for Inspector Todd. So he's now the inspector in Detroit. We later find out that that Taggart has now taken over as the chief in the Beverly Hills Police Department from Ronnie Cox's character. I can't remember what his name was in the first three. Everybody is getting promoted around Axel except Axel. Axel likes being a man of the people. He's in Detroit. He's doing Detroit stuff. And this film, Charles, is a huge homage to the original one from 1984. So much so that the opening is sort of similar. They brought back all the music that was in the first one is in this one. The cues in this film are almost identical to the cues that were in the first film. What were you going to say, Charles?
Bogomil.
Bogomil, thank you. So Bogomil is retired or not in this movie, and now Taggart is the chief of police there now. But I'd say all that to say that sometimes, and we talked earlier about when people have a certain expectation or a certain thing that they want to look forward to. I love the first Beverly Hills Cop. I really did. Now the fact that they're doing this huge homage, and it's not saying it's the same movie. It's not like this is Hangover 1 and Hangover 2, right? But this movie is dripping in nostalgia. It's dripping in it. It's so much nostalgia that they want to show you and connect it back to the first one. It's almost like, Charles, they want us to forget about the third one. I mean, I'm not being funny. There are no references to the third one. It's like there was the first film, and then there's this film. Not to say that we like Beverly Hills Cop 2. 2 was cool, right? 3 was a disaster. The first one is golden, so we're gonna make this more in the style of 3. The style of 1. And this film, with the story, Taylor Page now joins the franchise as his daughter, who is investigating a case. And she gets in over her head. Rosewood, who was formerly a detective in the first 3, has a new occupation, and he is helping Axel's daughter. And when he discovers that she's in over her head, he makes a phone call back to Detroit. Of course, I don't know where. I guess on a cop salary in Detroit, he can just fly back and forth to Beverly Hills. He always has some place to stay.
It's called frequent flyer miles.
Frequent flyer miles. He's been flying back and forth to Beverly Hills for 40 years, man. So he shows up in Beverly Hills, and of course, the wisecracking Axel is back. Eddie Murphy, which is really interesting, because one of the observations that I picked up, Charles, is that 40 years ago when he made this first film, he was a comedian on the rise. He was wisecracking. He was sort of finding his way, you know, kind of riffing and doing his thing and figuring it out. 40 years later, Eddie Murphy is Eddie Murphy, man. He's the king. So Eddie Murphy is very comfortable as Axel Foley in this story, to the point where he's just like, hey, man, you know, I'm Axel, man. I'm going to do some crazy stuff. And the crazy stuff works, man, because it's Eddie Murphy and he makes it work, man. You know, bringing back Taggart and Rosewood, Bronson Pinchot, working with Kevin Bacon, which ironically, I talked a little bit about that to Kevin Bacon, that his first breakthrough role was 40 years ago, at the same time Eddie was doing his when he had Footloose that was out. So the fact that we put a little Footloose in the movie, we bring some Dark Knight in there with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, so you got a whole lot of stuff happening. Now, he's also the guy who partners with Axel to help investigate this case. And of course, they don't see eye to eye. He thinks that Axel is old school, which he is. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But ultimately, I think this movie really is a good comparison to Bad Boys 4. So both of them produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. Both of them featuring characters that people are very, very familiar with. Both of these action comedies, of course, Beverly Hills Cop kind of created the action comedy, because if you think before this film, what was an action comedy? This is the creation of a genre where you took a comedian, put him in there, and it's been copied so many times, whether it's Rush Hour, Blue Street, everybody's wanted to do an action comedy. Eddie Murphy, I mean, Lethal Weapon, everybody, this is the first one that really kicked it off. So, like I said, man, this to me feels like a much stronger effort than the reboot or the sequel of Coming to America, which I thought was a disaster. I thought Eddie was really, really great, and Dolomite Is My Name. So this really kind of reboots and puts the Beverly Hills Cop franchise back on some solid footing. And along with the fact that it's on Netflix and that it's not going to be in theaters, I think is really going to explode for Netflix this week.